Hello, how are you today? Woo, it's good to see you. I don't see you though. There we go. A little trick to start the program. My guest today says it can feel scary when you need to present yourself as a potential
Hello,
guest.
how are you today?
Oh.
Woo, it's good to see
Okay, so we're just going to give y'all a heads up that behind the scenes, there's been some funky stuff happening today, and we take that as a great compliment that the enemy wants to be problematic. And so we are praising God right now, and we already have before we got online, that this is going to be a great program. I'm glad to see you here. Let me start over. My guest today says it can feel scary when you need to present yourself as a potential guest on a talk show host or a podcast. She's going to walk us through how to present ourselves. She's also going to tell us about her book, published in 2013, called Battered Hope, which has helped so many people, Christians and non-Christians alike. We're going to find out why that's true. Hi, I'm Patricia Durgan, and this is Marketers on a Mission. We present marketing tutorials and interviews for Christian writers, speakers, and artists. This is episode number 155, 7 Things to Remember When Pitching Yourself as a Guest on a Podcast, with author and podcast host, Carol Graham. Hey, Carol, how are you?
Hi, Patricia. I'm so excited to be with you.
We're going to have a great time. We've already got people here. Hello, everyone. Thanks very much for joining us. We've got lots of good stuff. Carol, you're an author, a radio show host, a health coach, and a motivational speaker, and that's just your day job. How do you get all these things done, Carol?
Well, we also have 2 brick-and-mortar businesses. You didn't get that in there. That's the day job. I'm the queen of organization.
The queen of organization. Mm-mm-mm.
And my mantra is, do it right, do it now.
You know, I've never, of all the people I've talked to through my whole life, I have never heard anybody say both of those together. Usually they say one of the two with another phrase attached. But I've never heard anybody say it the way you say it.
Okay, well.
I'm impressed. You have a message of hope. You encourage others to hope. You have an entire platform based upon hope. But that didn't come into your life wrapped with a pretty pink bow, did it?
No, not at all. But it is a thread that I hung on to my whole life.
Mm-hmm. We're going to lightly touch on some of the battles that you fought and won: cancer, rape, marital abuse, loss of a child more than once, not the same child, financial ruin, and in each case, God delivered you, didn't He? And made you stronger and made your message more powerful and effective, didn't He?
If those things had not happened to me, I would not be the person I am now, bottom line. And we've all heard that from people who have gone through a lot.
Yes. Nobody wants to go through it on the front end, and we're always grateful on the back end.
That's right.
The journey teaches us so many things. Now you've got a husband and children. You're a dog rescuer. Which comes first, your husband or your dogs?
Boy. Well, they kind of go hand in hand. The dogs are attached to my husband's hip, so it's a package deal, you know.
And you've been rescuing dogs for a long, long time. What was the draw? How'd you get into that?
Just seeing dogs that were hurting, like neighbors who had abused their animals or something like that, and I ended up actually stealing a couple, you know, to get them to a safe home or get them to SPCA or whatever. Mm-hmm. But as one story, I mean, a dog followed me home down the highway, you know, down the highway. And I knew, you know, and I kept turning around and taking him back, and 3 times, fine. The 3rd time I says, get in the car. I'm done with this. I got appointments, you know, I got places to be. And it was a big Doberman that actually was sitting in a wheelbarrow on the side of the road. Mm. And there was lots of cars. Why did he follow me? I have it on my forehead, dog rescuer, you know, and so there you go.
Now, how many do you have right now?
Just 2 little miniature doxies, which are the smartest dogs on the planet with the shortest legs, you know.
Let's talk for just a minute about your husband, because he had a bad car accident almost 3 decades ago, and you're the main caregiver and the main breadwinner. Is that right?
No, we're both equal breadwinners.
Okay.
Because we still have our stores, which he manages, and I don't know how he does it because he lives in chronic pain. He got a brain injury from a car accident, which left him with Parkinson's, neuropathy, and a lot of other unpleasant circumstances. But he still functions. That's amazing. He's tenacious, like somebody else we know.
No, I was going to say, look who he's married to.
Never ever give up.
If he wanted to be a loafer, he's in the wrong house. Let's see. We talked about your humor because it's everywhere. I've talked to you 3 or 4 times, and every single time we end up hee-hawing, even though there's definitely that serious element. And you said that years ago you took dance lessons, but there was...
Oh, my word. You had to bring that up?
We're just mentioning it in passing. What happened?
Well, my husband has not only perfect pitch, but he can do 11 rhythms with his body at any given time, all together at the same time. Like, the man is phenomenal when it comes to music. So I wanted to take dance lessons as a surprise for him. The second lesson, the teacher asked if she could give me my money back.
I love it. I love it.
Now, there's no rhythm here. I can do a lot of things, but that ain't one of them.
Oh, gracious, gracious, gracious. Well, let me check Facebook because I think we already have some things going on here. Let's check. Julie. Hey, Julie Dibble. How are you? Marlene Hook. And I apologize if it's Hauk or Hook. I do not know, Marlene, but we're glad you're here. Sharon is here. Sharon Tedford. So good to see all of you ladies. We've got good news for you later as the program develops because there are, Carol has mentioned that she will be gracious enough to share and review, not only share her knowledge today during the program, but actually review your pitches. And then we're going to reveal them anonymously and dissect them in an upcoming program. So it's going to be well worth your time today. Carol, years ago, we're talking about your life, and your book is called Battered Hope. It's based upon your life, which has had more than its share of ups and downs and tragedies. Isn't that a pretty cover? Battered Hope.
My daughter designed it.
You've had a lot going on. Years ago, one of the things that's has been painful for you is trying to adopt children. Started the process with 2 boys, 2 infant boys, 2 separate times, and just as your heart was engaged, that you lost them to the mother's changing her mind.
Correct.
And then you write, bliss walked into our lives, and you had a son, and you reared him. Is that right?
No, we reared 2. One we had for 1 year before the mother took him back. So it was a full year, and that was the same as the death of a child. Because you are his mommy, you are his daddy. You know, he is part of your life. And the mother changed her mind because of pressure from her father. And so she took him back. And then, yes, we did adopt our son we have now. He was 3 days old, and he's now got 9 children.
9?
Well, some of those are stepkids, but they're still, you know.
That's a big number.
That's what I said.
Is it close enough to you that you can enjoy them?
Pardon me? No, unfortunately.
I'm sorry to hear that because they're so wonderful.
I do have a daughter that's close, though, with 2 little ones. So
Okay. We have grandchildren who live afar and always have, and the Lord has brought them one set nearer to us, and that's for the last 4 years, and that's fixing to change, and we're going to be split up again. But that little pocket of time was special. Special. Your book, Battered Hope, has won a 2015 Author of the Year award. And even as important as that is, you yourself, as a professional woman, you have won several awards. One of them is the Sunshine Awards. And just recently, One Woman Fearless, also Women of Impact. Tell us about those awards, how they impacted your business, your ministry, if they did, and how you earned the right to receive those rewards.
I think the biggest impact that any award made was the Fearless Woman, or One Woman Fearless, because that's a global award. And the ceremony was huge. It was in Vancouver, British Columbia, and it was either 8 or 9 women from around the world who were chosen to receive this award. And essentially it was those who faced their fears and then gave back because of what they had gone through in that area of fear. And virtually, like, my book has 12 chapters, 12 traumas, one per chapter, and each one of those definitely would be rooted in fear.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So facing the fear, conquering the fear, and not allowing the fear to change or control you.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that would be the way to put it. So that's what the award was about. So it was awesome.
And that was just this year, so in Vancouver. Was that recent or?
Yes, that was this year in Vancouver.
It must have been very exciting to stand up in such a worldwide arena, even though everyone in the world wasn't there. We're talking about important people who are movers and shakers.
Yes.
And they recognize your ability.
Yes. And it was funny because when they do the introduction, it was like, I want to meet that person, because they make you sound like you're really something special, but you're not. You just lived your life, And that's what I always say. We each have a story. Every single one of us has a story. And what we do is what we do in our, it happens to us is the outcome of that story. So I'm just glad that I could share that with other people, that no matter how bad things are, you can get through it and you can soar above it and help others because of it.
Mm-hmm. But it takes God to teach us that. That's not natural, is it?
I don't know. On my podcast, I interview probably 50-50, like 50% Christians and 50 not. And some of the things that non-Christians have overcome through sheer tenacity, the human spirit is mind-blowing. Like, I sometimes sit totally speechless, and I'm rarely speechless, because I can't imagine somebody going through that without God. But the sheer tenacity, and I don't know if we're born with that or we get that because we want to survive. Mm-hmm. And so God helps us through it, and I don't understand how a lot of these people don't or did get through those things without God. That's the mind-blowing part to me, because it doesn't take away the problem, but it certainly gives you the strength to endure it.
Yes, yes. And that's in preparation for the next time, isn't it? In part.
I think you don't want to think that way, but yes.
Yeah. It never teaches us something without giving us the opportunity to use that muscle.
That's right. It's a good point. Right.
And you speak, how widely do you go? You speak all over the place, and you've done that for years. And it's about hope and tenacity. Tell us about your speaking ministry, please.
Basically Canada and the U.S. And I rarely ever say no, because the reason, let me rephrase it. A lot of people want to be paid huge amounts to go speak. And I know that a lot of organizations can't do that. And so that's not what I base it on. I base it on, if they ask, there's a reason, and it's usually because they need that message of hope. It's just like on my podcast. It is a message of hope. I'm in 140 countries. There's people around this entire globe that need that message. So if I can give that message and give them some encouragement, and sometimes just give them that thread to hold on to, then who am I? I can't say no. So I don't usually tell my husband I'm going away until just shortly before I go, so he doesn't. I'm headed out again, headed out of Dodge. But I love it. I absolutely love it. When I was 3 years old, I preached my first sermon.
Did you get anybody saved?
Well, my daddy said, because if you don't sit still in church, you got to come up and preach. So I wasn't sitting still, so he called me up to the platform. I didn't know what to say. He says, tell us about Jesus. I turned around, I picked up my skirt, and I said, look, new panties. And he knew right then he had a problem on his hands. So that's how my career started as a public speaker.
I'm not sure that had lasting eternal benefit.
Who knows? It might have given somebody something to laugh about that they didn't say.
Yeah, I'm sure it did that. And as recently as just last weekend, you were in Canada, was it? You were out speaking.
Last weekend I was in Eastern Washington.
Eastern Washington. That's almost Canada to me. I'm from Atlanta.
Well, it was 8 hours away, so it was from Canada border.
Let me check Facebook here and see if anything's going on. Are you still writing for the two magazines? I know that you're associated with Book Fun magazine. You've been writing articles for them every month. Are you still associated with the other one?
Yes.
That I could not find. Oh, Marlene is saying it's Hook. Just open the mouth in a southern way and let it roll out. Okay. Good lesson. Thank you, Marlene. You may have to remind me of that in the future again. How did you get hooked up with Book Fun magazine?
They asked me to, I can't remember exactly how it started. Oh, I saw it online. There was a request for somebody to do copywriting for videos. And this is when they were associated with a publishing company, a book publishing company. And so I started writing he gave me some that they had, and I said, And so I said, let me show you what I can do. And it started the whole process. And then from there, I started writing. I have 2 columns. They're monthly. One is just a general, like a lifestyle, whether it's about healing or leading someone to the Lord. But I always put in stories. It's not preaching at all. I'm a story person. I love stories. I love telling stories. I like listening to stories, true stories. And the other column, I interview somebody else and their story. So it's always an encouragement.
When did you, not counting your formerly mentioned debut as a public speaker, when did you start interviewing people?
After my book came out, and I began to realize that I'm not the only person in the world who had problems. Like that sometimes is a rude awakening, literally, because you're so engrossed in your own tremendous trauma that it's hard to think about other people. I mean, we literally change our focus by doing that. It's not that we don't care, but you're just so engrossed in it. And when I realized after my book came out and people said, oh, I can relate to that. Oh, I can relate to that. And it came through the reviews and other ways. I thought, oh, this is interesting. So I thought, why don't I do a show? I never did a show or knew anything about doing shows or anything. I just throw it out there, see what happens. So I went to LinkedIn and I put in anybody with a great story of going through insurmountable circumstances and coming out a survivor, let me know. First hour I had 100 replies. So I thought, I better get this thing ready. And it's mushrooms from there.
Now, if the book was released in 2013, about how long did it take before the program began?
I think I'm in this was 18, right? So that's shortly after.
Oh.
It didn't take, 6 months maybe.
Oh, that is soon. That's soon.
Mm-hmm. That's why I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't even know anything about social media at that point. So,
and is the show weekly?
It's not live. It's a podcast, and so I do it as many as I can in a week. Sometimes there's nothing. It depends upon how I interview, but so far I think we've done about 350 interviews, and there's lots more to come.
Pretty good. Now, viewers, you're not going to follow my normal protocol and have the links to everything that we're talking about in this episode. Excuse me, Carol's Amazon page, her website, and a direct link to her podcast, both on Stitcher and iHeartRadio. So we've got you covered. Don't worry about writing everything down and thinking you're going to miss something, because I'm not going to let you miss anything. Your book is your life story. We talked about that. One of the reasons, this is something I know is near and dear to you. It's a touch phrase for both you and me and a few other people I know. One of the reasons that your writing connects so well to people who have not yet accepted Christ and may never, based on their interest level, is because you just talk in everyday language and you don't use that horrible, horrible word called Christianese. We have a little bit. We're going to watch it because that's not the point of the program, but we both feel strongly about it. And Carol, tell me, how did you learn to not? Your father was a pastor. I mean, you were around the Christian world all your life. So how did you not succumb to drink the poison of Christianese?
I've been thinking about that recently because people have been asking me that. And what I think happened is, even as a young child, my father related to people on their level. And he never talked above them and made them feel like they weren't part of the club. And for example, he grew a garden, 120 rows garden in our backyard in the middle of the city of Detroit, Michigan.
Wow. And
he did that to feed the neighborhood. And he didn't talk to them about Jesus. They knew who he was. And that therein lies the secret. We don't have to spout it off, or who we are, or why we're special, or that Christ died for my sins, which means very little to the world in general. You know, Christ died for my sins. What does that mean? You know, we don't have to talk in those terms because we are showing them love. We're living the life. And when we do talk to them one-on-one, we're speaking as if they're a friend, not as if we're better than they are because we're a Christian and they're not. And so it's just being aware and conscious of, you know, talk and like you would another person, not making yourself. I think that's what we do. And, you know, I thought of something this morning that goes right along with this, and it's very interesting because I never thought about this before. As Christians, very often we are, whether it's in our church or our friends or whatever, it's drummed into us that we should not be ashamed of the gospel. And what we have done with that, I think this is where this whole problem has come. If we feel that we don't, you know, talk about the gospel and we don't express it in those terms and, you know, preach to people, then we're ashamed.
Oh.
And I'm pretty sure, it just dawned on me the other day, I think that's where that whole concept has come from. That has nothing to do with it. To me, my Christian, I don't want to use the word religion, but my Christianity is strictly obedience.
Yes. And
if God, for example, driving down the highway, I'll never forget this, many years ago, Lord spoke to my heart and said, stop that car in front of you. And I'm like, okay, I know God's voice already, and I have done this too many times, but I don't like it. It's not comfortable. Yeah. I don't want to. They might punch me in the face. Mm-hmm. But I honked my horn, you know, and motioned for her, next to her, pull over. She pulled over. She rolled down her window. I didn't have a clue what I was going to say, but God said, do it. Uh-huh. And I knew that he would equip me when I opened my mouth. And what came out of my mouth was, you were planning to commit suicide today, weren't you? And she burst into tears. And she said, how did you know? Well, what an opportunity. Don't worry about Christianese at that point.
Yes.
You see what I'm saying? You are obedient to what God asked you to do. You don't have to go around preaching and telling everybody and making them uncomfortable. And that's a whole other scene. And personally, I don't like it at all. And even when Christians start talking like that in front of me, I don't like it. Because I'm a human being. You know, I want you to relate to me in whatever area. And if we're Christians, fine. But if we're not, it's like an electrician talking about electrical terminology. I don't have a clue what he's talking about. Just tell me how to fix the light switch.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so it's the same thing. So I hope that explains it a little bit.
Yes, yes. And that's exactly how Jesus,
I believe that,
connects with us. He never, as ever, of all the crazy things I've done and all the good reasons he could have, and clean my clock and use Christianese, he's never done that. He always speaks, he doesn't always speak gently, but he always speaks.
Sorry, yes.
I know, even when I'm in the doghouse, though, and he has his own way to let us know that, he does not take us to the desert and leave us there. Still either there with us or he gives us a roadmap. He does something. The enemy is the one who takes us to the desert and leaves us to die.
Right.
Okay.
Basically, he asks one thing from us, and that is obedience.
And he connects with people through service.
Yes.
Just as you said, just miracles are such a big part of your life and your ministry. They really can't be separated from you. Give us a couple of miracle stories, and I don't mean that in a way that is, just be dramatic. That's not what I mean at all. You just shared one. People come to you. He sees that they find you, or vice versa, and you connect and serve them.
There are so many. I wouldn't even know where to begin, but I'll go with the first one that popped into my mind. We live in an area where I have to take a ferry to get to the mainland. And sitting and reading in the ferry lineup one morning, I felt the Lord speak to my heart. You need to talk to somebody today, and I'll show you who. Okay. So I'm sitting on the ferry, and believe me, this is not easy. Don't think, oh, she does it, it's so easy, she's done it a million times. No, it's just as hard the millionth time as it is the first time, because you don't know how somebody's going to respond. And you think, maybe I didn't hear that right, or whatever. And I mean, some of the stories are literally mind-blowing that I could share. We don't have the time. But this one, like I said, comes to mind. And so I was sitting on the ferry and having some toast and coffee for breakfast, and there was a woman whose back was to me, and I could see she had long, kind of stringy hair. She had a leather vest on and tattoos covering her neck, covering her arms. And I'm thinking, no.
Not her.
And I knew. And I thought, I don't even know what I'm going to say to this person. I'm going to walk up and say, hello, I'm here to give you a message. Like a pow. So I just walked up to her, and I put my hand like on her back, to show that I was going to be approaching her, came around to the front of the table where she was having coffee, and I said, I can see that you're a Christian. And she just about fell over. I mean, her appearance certainly did not look like she was a Christian. Uh-huh. She was reading her Bible, which I did not see. And she said last night at a bikers convention, someone led her to Jesus.
Oh, my goodness.
I know. And I'm like, I'm your first Christian friend. And we did. We remained. She was a stripper. I mean, she changed that. That's why she looked the way she did. I mean, it was mind-blowing. But we became friends for a very long time. And was able to help her and guide her and got her into a church and whatever. I mean, she was alone on that ferry, maybe thinking, did I make the right decision? This was really stupid. Who were those weird people I was with this week? Any number of things. Yeah. And here some old woman comes and tells her, hey, I can see you're a Christian. And she said, how did you know? I said, I see it in your eyes. And it was that tenderness, that love that was, and you knew because of her outward appearance that wasn't probably there before. So, yeah, but just one of many, many stories.
That's a pretty cool story right there. Hours after her conversion,
yes.
With assuming no resources whatsoever to pull from, nobody that she knew.
Well, somebody had given her a Bible at that, and then she was going back home. It was in the summer, and it was like one of those campsites where they have, they had a bikers rally, and that's where she was coming back from. So,
show us the cover to Battered Hope again, please, and tell us. There's another story coming. Why did you write Battered Hope?
Oh my goodness, I love this story. I'm a storyteller, and I love stories, as I mentioned. When my daughter was 16, now we had been through horrendous times in our family, and she was 6 when my husband was in his accident, and that was just one of many things that had happened. And she was 16, and her boyfriend, who now is her husband, gave her a little wiener dog, a little miniature
Dachshund?
I'm sorry, can't think of it. And she named him Louis Vuitton. And with Louis Vuitton came a Louis Vuitton hard-sided bag that's about 2 to 3 times the size of this little wiener. It was just a puppy, like 6 months old or whatever. And she had a trip planned with her friends to go to Costa Rica shortly after she got him. And so she said, Mom, would you mind babysitting little Louie? And I said, of course not. I mean, they were living in our house anyway. So she went, she packed her suitcase, she left. And that evening, my husband and I were sitting in the living room, and her bedroom was just behind the living room where there were stairs going up to her bedroom. And we're sitting there watching TV or whatever, and all of a sudden we were the thump, the thump, the thump, the thump. What is that? And here was little Louie dragging his Louis Vuitton bag down the stairs, one the thump at a time. And so he gets it down, he pulls it over, and we're like, you know, we can't believe it. Starts running upstairs, and he made, I don't know how many trips, but he brought down his ball, his blanket, his dish, his leash, everything that was his possession. And he brought them all down, and then he proceeded to try to put these items into this bag, which if he stood on his hind legs, his head would barely reach over it. And he made, you know, like, this was our night entertainment. Like, we just sat, took him like 2 hours. And he got everything in the bag, and then he tried to jump in.
Oh.
Give him a little boost, because it was obvious he wanted to get in that bag. So he gets in the bag, and then he proceeds with his mouth to pull that zipper from the inside.
Are you kidding? I
am not kidding. They're smart dogs. We have 2 of them now. They're definitely smarter than both of us put together. So, because they're motivated to outdo us, right?
Yeah.
Anyway, so as he is, he's doing this, and then I finally realized he saw his mommy pack her suitcase. And he figured it out. I packed my suitcase. I'm going to be with my mommy. So we let him in there the rest of the night. And the next morning he got up, and I could hear him, you know, scrambling around. And we opened it, and he's all excited, and he jumps out, no mommy. Yeah. And at that point, I started journaling those 2 weeks. She was gone for 2 weeks. And every single day he did the craziest things. It was just, and I took lots of pictures, and I had, this dog is more entertainment than any TV show ever could possibly be. And then after it was all done, I decided to turn it into a little book. You know, I had to print it with all the pictures and everything, gave it to her as a Christmas present. And she opened it, she laughed, she cried, and then she looked at me and she said, Mom, now will you tell your story?
Oh.
And it hit me because I had hidden so many years because of all the trauma in my life. I didn't want people to know my story. Even my very good, close Christian friends didn't know what we had been through because, as my sister said, every time the phone would ring and there was another trauma, she didn't want to answer the phone anymore because she couldn't believe how someone who she loved, her sister, could constantly go through stuff over and over and sometimes on top of each other and still always make her laugh. And so she didn't, you know, she couldn't comprehend that, couldn't understand that. And I realized that, yes, I will write my story. So it took me 10 years. Louis Vuitton, definitely I owe it to him. And then after it was written, she said, okay, Mom, now rewrite it to my generation. And turn it into, and I wasn't ready a story, but she said, take all the preaching out and turn it into a story for my generation. Now, she was now in her 20s when, you know, and so I did that. And I'm very proud that the book is read as probably by more non-Christians than Christians. The message of God is strong, and it is also subtle. And it's because there's no Christianese in it, essentially, as we talked earlier. And it took the preaching out because we can preach till we're blue in the face and it accomplishes very little unless someone is ready to receive it, as a couple of the little examples that I gave. So
you also,
that's how it came into being. Sorry.
No, you also took the veil off, didn't you?
Oh, that was hard. I had 2 very close friends not talk to me for months. They were so angry. And basically angry because I was going through all that pain and never shared it with them.
Oh.
So, in hindsight, tell your friends. Let them help you carry those burdens, you know?
Yeah.
You don't have to do it alone.
We had a family member go through something horrible, just horrific, and we didn't find out for a year and a half after it was over, and we were hurt.
Yes, yes.
We're here. We're standing right here. We're willing to pray. We believe in intercessory prayer. We're on your team, but you didn't tell us. It was odd.
One of the reasons why is because we're embarrassed. Especially when you've gone through a lot, it's like they're going to say, oh, no, not again. What happened now? And so you don't want to go there. And, but anyway.
That makes sense. Did those relationships heal over time?
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
Good.
Definitely.
Excuse me. And it's not actually it has a, excuse me, it's a memoir. It's not a diary or devotional. It's a memoir.
Yes, it is a memoir, and it is, I know we've all heard this said before, but I guarantee it, and every time I guarantee it, people come back and say, you were right. You can't put it down. The very first copy that I sold was to an 88-year-old woman, and she bought it in our jewelry store, and she came back the next day or 2 days later. She said she was really angry because she started reading at 10 o'clock at night, which was her bedtime. And she stayed up all night. So I figured, you can keep an 88-year-old woman up with your story, And it's true. And that sometimes people say, I had to read it so fast because there was so much happening that I have to go back and read it again. Mm-hmm. So that's exciting. But it's not just exciting because it is a good story, but it's exciting that people are getting encouraged to know that no matter what you go through.
And that ties back into your speaking, which also ties back into your podcasts. You're a package deal, aren't you?
I think so.
A good package deal. Thank you, Lord. Let's see. Marlene says, she's telling me how to pronounce her name. I thought she had something else to say. Nope. I misunderstood. Okay. No problem. Hey, Janelle. It's good to see you today. I hope you're doing well. All right, so let's talk about the podcast because the book was a precursor to the podcast. How did that come about?
As I mentioned about LinkedIn, that I got all those requests, and so I had to all of a sudden figure out how to do a podcast.
But you were the only one involved in it at that time? You didn't have somebody else along with you?
I'm still by myself. I do everything by myself, which is not necessarily a good thing. Because you're just too stretched. But anyway, no, and I took the course that was online. What's his name? John Dumas.
Yes.
Steps A to Z, very thorough, very easy. I was a good student. I did everything exactly right. In the meantime, I was interviewing. And some people are saying, well, when is my interview going to be? I still haven't figured out how to do the podcast yet, but I didn't want to lose all these people who came to me with their stories. So it was, Okay,
I love that. So you've got two concurrent threads going.
Yes.
One, you're building the platform, and the other, you're doing the work, and then you merge them together at the right time.
Exactly. So when I first, but one thing that John does tell us is to have at least 15 ready before you start your first one. So yeah, I did. I definitely had my 15 ready.
Well, I suppose it's always good to have an archive when people even when you first start. Don't go local, don't go public. And this isn't hard and fast, but it's good wisdom. Don't go public until you have an archive of some level.
Yes, I think so.
That makes sense. Hopefully, people are going to want to know more than the one that they came for, whether it's a blog post,
Exactly.
And we want to have something there, a pool of information and resources for them.
Because even as an interviewer, not every story interests me personally. And so we all, we choose, which ones we want to listen to and what we can relate to, or we may know somebody, I know they'll be really, enjoy this or whatever. So yes, it's nice to have the variety.
And this is going to be long term. You're going to keep going 350 plus, and you're continuing on. And
I don't see why I should. I got so many people in the wings. They might come out and get me if I did. So yeah, I don't see any reason to stop.
That's a nice.
I love my guests, and I try to maintain a relationship with them for at least a year after. And it's many of them have become good friends.
Let me see if we have any questions. Let me refresh this and see if we have any questions. And we'll get to the marketing element. Before we get there, though, let's, nope. Before we get there, do you foresee in the future you're going to be writing more books?
I have a minimum of 2 in me and 3 sitting on the fence, and it all comes down to time. I have 5 jobs, which includes brick and mortar jobs, plus I'm involved in many other things, let alone the writing and everything else. So when I say I'm busy, it's not like, oh, like everybody, I'm so busy. No, I'm busy. Like there is, very, very early in the morning before it's light to very, very late at night, every day, 7 days a week. And so to have that time to sit down and actually write, it's there, it will come. And hopefully when we sell our brick and mortar businesses, there will be a little more time because I'm the bookkeeper and all that stuff as well. So, so anyway, that's, I'm planning on it, yes. In the meantime, I love writing for articles for different magazines, etc.
And these future books would be, I know you're not ready to discuss them, I'm not asking you to, but they would be totally different because your story is already being told. Not that you couldn't say something more about it, but basically your story is out there now.
No, that was, there's 20 years after that story. And those 20 years are much worse than the first 20 that were in the book. I know.
Mercy.
And those are more painful. So hence that's also a little bit of why it's held me back. Yeah. But I have written lots of articles about that. Yeah. Like, for example, you asked about our son. Our son has been estranged from us for 7 years. I have not met my grandchildren except for the first 2. So this is a huge thing that is happening not only in the U.S. but worldwide, where people are losing their children for any number of reasons. Political, of course, is one of them now, but also religion is one. In our case, we have no idea except that he was an adopted baby with fetal alcohol. And that is a scenario that very often when men are in their 30s, they do leave their homes because they want to find their true identity. So this is not uncommon, but it hurts like you can't believe. And so I've addressed that in many articles that I've written for various magazines. And it's amazing how many people come back and say that pain is actually worse than losing a child to death. And I've interviewed both because there's never closure. And so that's all going to be part of the second book.
I am so sorry. That's more inner work, isn't it? Deep inner work.
Exactly.
Let me see. I'm getting information, conflicting information. Facebook is giving me, as usual, we're having more comments than it's showing me. I don't know how that benefits anybody. All right, so let's move to the marketing, and we'll come back to the comments, and hopefully we'll be able to answer people's questions and hear what they have to say, because we definitely want to do that. And after we're finished with the marketing element, then we're going to tell you how to get in touch with us, submit your pitch, which we're fixing to talk about, to Carol, and she's going to review it on an upcoming show. We haven't decided that date yet, but we'll know very shortly. All right, Miss Carol, how can we, 7 things to remember when we want to be a guest on a podcast or a blog show?
Oh, you want me to give you all 7? Is that the plan? Okay. I wrote them down.
Good.
I think one of the first things to remember when you're, and I think this also goes to not just pitching for a podcast, but pitching for an article to be read or whatever, right, that you've submitted to all the various venues that are out there. So less is more. When somebody sends me a pitch, and I receive maybe 10 pitches a day, and somebody sends me a pitch and I open it and all I see are words, give me 1 sentence, give me 2 sentences, that's what I want to see. But and I sometimes have gone back and I thought, oh, this sounds interesting, but I don't have time to read it. Literally. And so I'll go back and say, give me your story in 2 sentences and I'll get back to you. So I do give them that second chance because it's just too much. And I don't even know if I want them as a guest, so why would I want to read their story?
Yes.
How and that's the key point. So don't give too much information. Plus, you want to put some mystery in it. To me, mystery is huge. And when I have been on some weird and wonderful shows, I mean, some really weird shows that I have pitched myself to and I've been on. I told you about one, for atheists, by atheists, and they had me talk about Christianese. I mean, and talk about, and we made it funny. And there was lots of comments, so the reason I'm telling you that story is when I made my pitch, the guy came back and he said, no one has ever made a pitch that good before. I thought, well, isn't that interesting? I felt almost embarrassed, like, oh, he knew it was a pitch. It's all like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, And so, yes, we want you on the show because I don't give out enough of that information. You want to have that element in there, but you want to grab their attention. And so less is more. Think of it as an elevator pitch. You're in an elevator for how many seconds? And you want to put your book in front of somebody and say, buy my book. How are you going to say that? And I've done that in restaurants or sometimes too with my book. And sometimes I think maybe they're intimidated and say, oh, okay, I'll buy it. But it's the idea is you want to get their interest. And so, read it over and over again from another perspective. Don't read it as you were writing it. Read it as somebody else reading it. And that will open your eyes to, ooh, she sounds pretty braggy. Or I don't, what I'm saying? So you want to get their attention. Another way to do it is to figure out if someone who really appreciated you or whatever, if it's a business associate or a friend, how would they introduce you? And so that's another way to do it is present yourself as someone else introducing you, because very often people very nervous about making themselves look too good, or you don't want to come across too overconfident or something like that. So how would somebody else introduce you? And that really, and when you hear somebody introduce you that you respect, for example, doesn't it make you feel good?
Yes.
So use that. Confidence is essential, which but you don't want to be overconfident and unapproachable. Like I've had that happen where people are telling me how awesome they are, and I really want to know their story. Does that make any sense? Am I coming across, okay?
Yes.
So, okay, enough said about that.
The story is part of how they're going to serve your audience, but how awesome they are doesn't serve your audience.
That's right. What makes you different? I've had 100 people tell me that they were raped, or more than 100, probably 1,000 people over the years have told me that they were raped by a family member. Why is your story different? There's so many memoirs out there about that very subject. And so what makes your story different?
I'm sorry.
Let's see. That's a good question. I knew you were going to ask me that. Possibly not even saying what it is, but just saying that a shocking event changed your life that the audience would relate to, something like that, rather than I was raped by my stepfather and I, lived to tell the story. It just, so was, like I said, thousands of other people. And so you want to stand out and be different, or something to the effect. And because my show is about survivors, so it was along the lines of, although incredibly bad things happened in my life, I have taken those things, without even telling you what they are, I have taken those things, turned them around to good to help others. Bang, I want that person. I want to know how your trauma has helped you to help others. Okay, because that is what's going to help somebody else. Otherwise, it's just a story, and it could possibly be a boring story.
Yes. Good.
So what makes you different? And follow up. Don't be, let tenacious become your middle name. Don't, if they didn't respond, they might maybe got 100 in front of you. There's nothing wrong with saying, hey, I sent you an inquiry, blah, blah, blah. I'm just wondering if you might be interested, if you could maybe let me know one way or the other. There's nothing wrong with that, because I'll look at that person. I'll dig that person up and go, oh, they really want to share their story. They're just not putting the same message out to 100 different podcasts and hoping someone's going to answer. Yes. They want to be on my show.
That's a great point.
But the first and foremost, most important thing when you want to be on a show or you want to write a story for a magazine is to talk to them about their magazine, number one, or their show, number one. Yes. And don't just say, I looked at your website or I listened to your podcast. Give them a detail.
Yes.
When I open it up and it says, I recently listened to you interviewing so-and-so about blah, blah, blah. I'm like, oh, she listened.
Yes.
Okay. So they got my attention.
Yes.
And, so she knows what my show's about. Because I've had people want to talk about stuff on my show that has nothing to do with my platform.
Yeah.
And so, like, why'd you bother even writing me? It maybe does, but I'll never find that out because they didn't share that. So listen to the show, at least 2. And even if you don't listen to the whole show, but you want to get a feel for, what the show's about or the magazine. And then it shows it, because how often don't we get people who want to pitch stories to, say you want to pitch your life story to an electronics magazine, it ain't going to work. Unless
we don't think about it that way, do we? And if we started thinking about it that way, that would temper how we shape our story.
Exactly. And you may be an electrician, and so then you can mold that to fit that platform. I was on the top of this pole one day and I got electrocuted and fell on the ground, and there's my story. I'm going to listen to your story. Okay. Oh, yes. Another very, very key important, which goes right along with the last one we shared besides listening, is start to engage with them. If I'm going to contact somebody and said, I would like to be on your show, or I want to write an article for your your magazine or whatever, before I even contact them, I start engaging with them on Facebook or Twitter or whatever. Mm-hmm. So when they see my name,
yes,
they already see my name.
Yes.
And, I've maybe left a comment or 2 and made them feel good about what they just wrote or whatever. And that, because you will remember the name, mm-hmm. more than likely. Yes. Because it'll trigger it, right? Oh, yes, yes, okay, that's, and I do a tremendous amount of tweets and Facebook little memes and whatever on animals, on dogs, because that's what I'm all about. So, people, that's how I relate to people. That's how I engage. It has absolutely nothing to do with my show. It probably has nothing to do with, the price of rice in China. But it gets me to engage with other people. Yeah. And, they lost a dog. They lost a cat. I'm, the first one there to, to talk to them about that and to encourage them and to say how sorry it was. You're engaging. You're starting a conversation. But what you're also doing is you're building your base.
Yes.
And it shows your care. Right? So it doesn't necessarily have to be about what you want to share your story about, but just start engaging with them.
Good.
Biggie. If you're a Christian, ask to be on non-Christian shows.
Say that again, please.
If you are a Christian, ask to be on non-Christian shows. 98% of the shows I'm on, 95, are non-Christian shows. Okay? There is so much out there for the Christian to tap into. There are so many stories. There are so many articles. There are so many books. There's so many of everything. And they're written in the Christian vein and very often in Christianese language because that's their audience, right? Step out of your comfort zone. Ask to be on a show where you can share your story and be prepared to not talk like a Christian, but you have this. You have the foundation there. They're going to know. I've had some very, very rich men. One was a billionaire on my show who's a strong Christian. He never once mentioned God, but his principles came across and how to become wealthy so strongly. And I brought it up. I'm the one that brought it up as the interviewer. He didn't have to say anything because I'm trying to determine what the audience is thinking and the questions they might have.
Yes.
And when I'm interviewing him. So I would bring it up and say, you sound like you're a man of faith. And then that opens it up.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And you can share that. Again, you don't have to preach, but go on non-Christian shows. And they probably thought I was a non-Christian show when they came on, and they were being very respectful that way. And it opens up all kinds of new avenues. Like I said, I was on the Atheist show. I've been on all kinds of weird shows. I love them because you get your name out there. They see your name again. They're going to go look you up and want to follow you and want to read other things you've written or other things you've talked about because they saw it once and they liked it. If they don't like it, well, that's fine. But it just opens it, get out of your comfort zone. Huge.
And can we say that, the normal common sense elements are still in place? You want to look for non-Christian shows if you're specifically looking for that this day, this week, this month. There still need to be people who have an audience similar to the audience that you're trying to spur.
Right.
All that is, you're not starting from scratch. You're just broadening your horizons and asking.
That's right. Exactly.
Knocking on a door. Will you open this door? And moving on from there. It's just common sense, isn't it? But nobody talks about that, Carol.
I know. That's one of the reasons my show's #1 on Google under the subject of hope, because I don't preach and I refuse to. And people are looking for hope, but they've already seen the guys on the street corners preaching it, right? So they know what they're going to say. But they don't know what this chickie over here is going to say about hope. And then they start listening. I'm like, wow, how did she get through that? Where did she find her strength? I want what she's got. And that's what you're doing. And there's nothing wrong with that. We are fishers of men. We need to put some bait out there,
Yeah.
And it's for a good cause. So,
one of the other things that you've mentioned on what we had talked about previous to the show, and I didn't fully understand it initially, but you explained it, and it was like, of course. You say, don't make excuses for anything, and you've got it in all caps. What does that mean to you? How can that help us?
I teach public speaking. And I used to teach it, and I teach it now in different venues, but I used to teach it for, that's one thing you never do. Sorry. I used to teach it to high school students in a Christian school. And it was a lot of fun because it's a good place to start to learn, how to do it so that you can do it the rest of your life.
Yes.
You have 6 seconds to make an impression when you are a public speaker. Those first 6 seconds, if you walk in and say, oh, I'm so sorry, I was so rushed this morning. Done listening. Don't want to hear it.
Yep.
I haven't been feeling good this week. Turn off.
Yeah.
No. So as soon as you put the I into it and that there's something wrong, and I haven't, my book has only been out for a little while, so I'm not sure if you're going to like it. Some stupid thing that they might put in a presentation like that, no, I'm not going to like it. You've already told me I'm not going to like it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we're coming from a positive versus a negative perspective, but excuses is huge, and I hate them. hate excuses. And so as soon as someone gives me an excuse of why they maybe didn't do thus and so, or why, my book isn't ready yet, but I thought that maybe you could still have me on your show or whatever. It's just a variety of things. I haven't had time. No, I'm not interested.
Yeah.
So don't make excuses. There are no excuses.
Professionals get things done, don't they?
Exactly. And you can turn that around too, because I've had lots of people say, my book is coming out in September. Positive, right?
Yes.
It's not coming from a negative place. My book is coming out in September. I would like to be on your show to launch my book. So they didn't say, I don't have my book ready yet. I'm really sorry you can't look at it. That comes in a totally different vein. And I'll go, yeah, let's pick a date. Let's get you in same day as your book launch or within that week or something like that. It's just how you present yourself. Remember that elevator pitch.
Yes.
People are going to like you or not like you within that first 6 seconds. I'm sorry, but that's the facts.
Instead of fighting it, we need to embrace it and start living in it.
What do you mean by that?
Instead of feeling like you're special in some way, you don't fit the rules or the guidelines. Instead of fighting it and trying to make it over this mountain,
right?
Just live in the reality. Let's get something done.
That's
all right.
Okay.
Sorry, I get excited. Last point you were going to make was follow their guidelines or fulfill their requirements.
Oh, yes. When I ask people to submit their stories from my column in Book Fun, and I give them my guidelines, probably 50% don't. They either don't read them or they think their guidelines are better. I'm not really sure. But it happens. If it happens to me, believe me, it happens to every other editor and publisher and podcaster, whatever. That's why you listen to the show. That's why you take a look at the magazine that you want to present your pitch to, so that you know what the guidelines are. Many of them have guidelines. Hello, read them. If they want it in 14 font, then give it to them in that, in Times Roman, or if they want it in Arial or whatever. Don't think that you're better, that your font is better or something. So you want to follow their specific guidelines. They have a reason for those guidelines, even if you don't like them. And sometimes I don't like them.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to be on their show, their program, their book, their magazine, then read their guidelines.
Yes. And these are all very common sense, but that doesn't mean that they're very common.
Exactly.
They're not commonly used, even though they're common sense. And that alone makes you stand out, doesn't it?
Yes. Because I know they've taken the extra precaution and time to meet those requirements, and I want to hear what you have to say.
Okay, let me check Facebook one more time, and while I'm doing that, will you give us how to submit your pitch for Carol's review? And we're going to do, like within 2 weeks, we're hoping to do this follow-up, and the process will be, I just asked you a question, but now I'm talking. I apologize. The process will be that you'll submit your pitch in writing based upon what you know and your gifts and your message, and how we have talked about this, about how to what to expect and how to present yourself. It will be you'll be part of your pitch will be part of an upcoming episode. You'll be anonymous. Nobody's going to identify you, point fingers, and laugh. There's nothing like that. We're here to serve and help you understand how to do these things so that God's message can get out online. You know who we are. So submit it in writing. And Carol said, nice enough, she said there's not a word count, but even though that's true, pay attention to what she said earlier. No encyclopedias. No encyclopedias. And we're supposed to send it, what is the email again, Carol?
BatteredHope@gmail.
BatteredHope@gmail.com, right? Gmail's always .com. So send your pitches in and do that. I mean, fill your own time frame, but I'd suggest within a week, because Carol's going to need, she's coming on in a couple of weeks. Just the date is the wild card. So she's going to need time to work that in. She's running 17 businesses now. Come on.
Hey, and don't just send me your pitches. Send me your comments. Send me your questions. I love the interaction. I love right now I'm talking to a screen. I know there's faces out there.
Yeah.
So write me. I love it. I always interact with people. Might be at 3:00 in the morning, but.
The subject line, because she gets so many pitches every day, 10 a day on average. So the subject line needs to be Patricia. And she'll know that that's this particular program, and she will be able to call that out of all of her cumulative inbox, okay? Let's see. Annette Maria Griffin says, what a great opportunity. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
So good to see you. Sharon here. Sharon Tedford is here. Let's see if we have any other questions or comments. If you have questions or comments afterwards, you're welcome just to ask them. Here, we'll be available for a few minutes and come back. If we walk away from the computer, we'll be back. We're not going anywhere. Thank you so much, Carol Graham. You got 500 more things you can tell us about. So you're going to come back, right?
Absolutely. I loved it, and I enjoyed the interaction. And you are an awesome, awesome interviewer and host. I thank you.
Those are kind words coming from somebody with as much experience as you.
Well, you already know you're an awesome host, so you've got the confidence. That's what we're talking about. You've got the confidence, and I'm here to applaud that.
Thank you so very much. And viewers, we appreciate you. If it wasn't for you, whether it's Carol's podcast or this live, Facebook Live, well, we'd be spinning our wheels.
That's right, exactly.
We have no interest in that. That doesn't give God the glory. That doesn't change any lives. So we're grateful for you, and we know that you are more than an integral part of our programs and our reach. Carol is a speaker, a writer, a teacher. She has businesses, brick and mortar businesses. Do you need her services? There's more to know about Carol, and we're going to learn more. Excuse me. This has been Marketers on a Mission, episode number 155. She's got me beat by 200. It's going to take me a while to catch up. I don't know if I can surpass that. Episode number 155, 7 things to remember when pitching yourself as a guest on a podcast. We've reached the end of another week, haven't we? Wasn't it wonderful? We had so much energy here, so much content, great guests, so with a heart to serve. Carol's just the latest, and we appreciate it. Our guests were superb, and they're so generous with their time, particularly Carol, as she's going to has volunteered to review your pitches. And this is going to tell you her heart. She hasn't limited it to 3. My first thought was, let's do the first 3, or 3 the tallest 3, or whatever it is. And she said, no, let's leave it open. So go wide open. So go out of your comfort zone, submit your pitch. The subject line is Patricia, excuse me, so she can identify that amongst all of them. Excuse me, the email to send it to, in writing, of course, is batteredhope@gmail.com. Pay attention to the guidelines that she shared today. Look forward to her coming back. Once again, Miss Carol Graham, thanks, and we'll see you next week.
Thank you.